Today's project is going to be trying to rebuild this power steering pump on a 2001 Lexus ES300. It's got original parts kit here. You can see the part number for this power steering kit. Comes with a new oil seal, some O-rings, a gasket, and so forth. So let's get to it. Now before we get started, I will give a shout out to a gentleman, I guess his name on the Club Lexus forum is Arseny, and I'll try to leave a link in the description. He sent me kind of a step-by-step procedure to do this. However, I couldn't find any videos on YouTube, so I figured I'd make one for you guys. There is two brackets that you have to take off once you remove it from your vehicle, which he gives a kind of better description on how to remove it. I obviously already have. I put on a new pump. It leaks all over the place, so he just recommended to rebuild it because the OEM pumps are pretty good. Just normally the seals and gaskets kind of go out on, which causes them to leak. So there's a bracket that goes in these three holes. There's a rear bracket that goes through those holes and bolts together and kind of sandwiches the whole pump together, and that's what you use to mount it to the vehicle. So you remove those, and then we'll first start with removing this union port, which has this screw right here, and this big high pressure line bolt or port or whatever you want to call it as well. These two things have to come off first, so let's take those off. So I had to be a little ingenuitive. I don't really have a vise, and I'm usually not a big fan because I don't like squeezing it and scoring it and marking it. So if you can tell, what I did here is I bolted this thing down to my table. Use this beam here, this 2x4, as kind of a support so that it wouldn't roll off. 24 mil socket around this bolt. Use my one of the bars off my jack as that breaker bar. It seemed to work out really well, and I can now get this loose. So the main union bolt there, or the high pressure side, has a spring and this other little valve that goes along with it. So as you take that out, be sure to kind of watch for that. Mine didn't actually pop out. I don't know if yours does or not. Just kind of be mindful of it, that you don't lose the spring or watch it shoot out somewhere or something. So next thing I did is kind of the same as before, is I flipped the pump over, bolted it to my table, and that allowed, if you can see here, using this kind of as a brace against my board, or the table rather, and then that allowed me to get some leverage on these bolts, these 4 bolts, to take this back casing off. So right about now is a good time to start taking pictures. If you're not real keen on memory, keeping your stuff together, there's 4 bolts in that back plate. 2 are long, 2 are short, so you want to kind of mind your placement on that. It's kind of self-explanatory when you look at it, the way it sits on the pump itself. Inside here, there's 2 O-rings. There's going to be one in this outside ring and one right here on the inside around this little spindle or indention or whatever you want to call that right there. I'm not really good with my lingo here, so please forgive me. But take big note on how this wave washer, I don't know if you see it, it's got waves in it, okay? It also has these 2 grooves. It looks like there's one right here and one on the other side. So you want to take special note on how that sits in here, because we're going to take this whole thing apart. The next step in our journey here is to remove this side plate, which you see right here. This had the wave washer on it we were talking about. So there's 2 pin locations. See these 2 holes, the 2 little bitty holes? And if you look here, there's a pin here and a pin here that lines these up like so. So if you just grab it on both ends here, pop it right off. One thing to note about these pins is if your kit does not have replacement pins, I would not recommend removing those. This next step is pretty important, as you don't want to lose these little pins here. All right, these guide plates here that slide in and out, as you can see there. have two sides. One is a straight cut. I'm trying to get the lighting here so you can see it very well. So one has a straight cut. Those are the ones that butt up inside there. If you look close, the outer edges are kind of beveled. They almost have like rounded corners on them. Those go to the outside. Make note of that before you start taking all these apart and trying to reassemble it, because you need to follow real closely here, because if you screw this up, then you're going to ruin this pump you spent all your time working on. So now that we've got all the vanes removed, set them to the side. There's a slide plate removed. Next thing you want to do is take off this little bitty metal clip. I don't know if you can see it there. We're going to pop that clip off and then slide this guy right on off there. Now that the clip's removed, the pump shaft should be able to just slide on out the front of the pump. Right out that seal right there, should be able to just slide on out. So using the same holes I used earlier to get the bolts off the backing plate, I'll put a bolt in through the pump and then make sure not to damage the pins we talked about not removing. And this is going to allow me to get in here and try to get this bearing out, or seal, my bad. So Arsony recommends taking like a flat blade screwdriver or a crowbar, but I would suggest maybe putting some electrical tape around it or something so that you don't damage this ring or damage inside of here as you're trying to pry this thing out. Now that the oil seal is removed, your pump is pretty well disassembled. Get you some brake cleaner or something, and something that you can clean these metal parts with. Clean them up really good, check for any scoring, any warping, that sort of thing. And then like and subscribe to this video, and then check out part 2 as we reassemble the pump.